Good morning and welcome to Lake Superior Interfaith Community Church. As our name suggests, we are a community which honors many paths to the divine. And to support this vision, we invite a different speaker to share their story each week. And today, our President Carol Carey has graciously handed the reins to me. My name is Jasmine Phoenix. I'm a former president, and I'm also the speaker today. And I'm going to start with my invocation, which is short and to the point. The unknown is where all outcomes are possible. Enter it with grace. And now, I saw some lovely greetings happening, but we're going to do it a little more officially. Pre-COVID, when we were able to mingle in any way we liked, we would take time at this point in the service to greet one another. And so, that this is that time. I will say that if you would like to greet and be greeted, please stand. If you remain seated due to your own comfort level, that means that you would prefer to maintain social distance. And so now, please take this opportunity to greet one another. We had a little technical issue there because I tripped over the tripod that holds the camera. So if there was a little wiggle for those of you at home, it was not intentional and it has been fixed. Now, I can tell that people have been missing this because, as usual, we still have people talking and visiting, and there will be time for more of that later. All right, our first hymn today, and please rise, is Let There Be Peace, and that is on the card in the back of the pew in front of you if you need those words. And I'm sorry, I do want to mention, Carol LSICC is our accompanist today, and she will be playing our music this morning. Carol. And please remain standing. We're going to roll right into hymn 122 and Wings of Song.
I'll play just the last couple lines.
All right, please be seated. This morning, we're going to forego the usual announcements, but does anyone have anything else that we haven't heard before? Any upcoming event? This would also be a good time for prayer requests, if there are any prayer requests that need to be shared. Jerry.
Just for the love and the light and the peace and the joy of resurrection within each of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes throughout our families, our cities, our states, our country, and our world. To find love and light, peace and joy. To be who we always are and all connect to the love and light, peace and joy of the universe. And that's going to be our home when we leave here, is in the universe of spirit.
Exactly. Thank you, Jerry. And of course, I think the unspoken intent of all of us is to offer love and support to Ukraine. Today we are going to read the unity principles, and those are on a sheet in most of your pews. And I would invite you to read those with me, because this is a communal activity. God is the source and creator of all. There is no other enduring power. God is good and present everywhere. We are spiritual beings created in God's image. The Spirit of God lives within each person. Therefore, all people are inherently good. We create our life experiences through our way of thinking. There is power in affirmative prayer, which we believe increases our awareness of God. Knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them. And I will be offering a healing meditation today, and as a lead-in to that, we will sing hymn number 74, In the Silence. And again, that is in the book Wings of Song, in the pew there in front of you. And now I invite you to relax into your seat. Become comfortable. Your back is straight but not rigid. Your feet are touching the floor. And your breaths become a little deeper and more even. And now there is only your breath. And so together, we breathe. I invite you to come with me to a sunny summer day in North Dakota. Because in North Dakota, there are fields upon fields upon fields of sunflowers. And when you drive by a field of sunflowers at one part of the day, those big, beautiful, golden flower heads are facing in one direction. And if you were to drive by a few hours later, it seems as though those flower heads have turned to follow the sun. The flowers are pure in their intent. They draw their nourishment from the soil and from the rain and from the sun. And they grow and they reach, and they grow and they reach until they are harvested. And then their physical body goes to nourish others, whether it is human or animal or plant. They do not mourn that they have reached their maturity and have gone to serve others. They live their lives as sunflowers because that is what they came here to do. And now for a few moments, I invite you to go to a field of sunflowers. And how you become one with them is up to you. You may stand a short distance away so that you may view hundreds of them at a time, or you may walk into the field so that your feet touch the same earth that the sunflowers are rooted in. And as you gaze up at the sky, you realize that those beautiful, beautiful flowers are even taller than you as they reach for the sun. And now, in whatever way feels right to you, be one with the sunflowers for a few moments. And now it is time to begin to return to this time and space. But remember the sensations as you're leaving the sunflowers. Remember the feeling of the earth beneath your feet. Remember the sun on your face, the wind in your hair, and the occasional thunderstorm that nourishes the earth, which nourishes you. You can return to the simplicity of this nourishing place, this peaceful place, at any time. And in these last few moments together, I remind you that the sunflower is the symbol of Ukraine, where sun and earth and love and support are greatly needed at this time. And so it is. Amen. My sacred text this morning is a poem that I just found this morning, and I have invited Sue Brewer, who's another former president, to read that for us. Sue?
Good morning, everyone. I am here to share a secret. I am not who I have always been. The world that lies outstretched before me is not the only one I've seen. I've traveled on the tails of comets. I've burned up in the hearts of stars. I've been spat out of supernovas that left me scattered near and far. I have dined in distant galaxies and have taught the birds to sing. I have danced for a whole lifetime upon Saturn's dusty rings. I've been here for long enough to learn what makes the willow weep. I've sung celestial lullabies that sent the moon to sleep. I've been both flowing water and the stone that blocks its way. I've been frozen, I've been molten, and I'll be again someday. Though I've been a million things, this is the first one that can smile. I am pieces of the universe, living as a human for a while.
Thank you, Sue. That's on the way to reminding us that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. I titled my talk today, Love in the Third Degree, because we're going to talk about some of the bumpier aspects of love on the way to a resolution of some kind. Love is a word that we hear all of the time, every day, somewhere in our lives, whether it's from the people around us or movies or television or social media. I didn't bother to research this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it weren't one of the most used words in the English language, and I'm not talking about the little bits like a and the. I'm talking about words with more significance. And so, of course, in our culture, there are, as we use the word, there are degrees of love as we express it. I remember loving my fourth grade teacher. No one had ever understood me before the way that my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Thomas, understood me. And she was gentle and sweet, and I remember one day when I forgot myself and sort of mouthed off to her, which was unusual because I was a good little girl, at least for a while. And she snapped at me and I cried. I was really sad that my idol had barked at me. And, even though, of course, I realized that I had provoked it. And we may say that we love pizza, or we love chocolate, or I love my ornery little black cat. But again, degrees from the word. Then we move up a level and we talk about emotional attachments. We love our family. We love certain friends. And yet, of course, when the feelings become stronger, there's more of a possibility of a negative side to that. We can be very upset with family members, depending on anything they might do, if it offends us in some way. We may cut off friends who displease us in some way. And so one of the things that I want to suggest for us to consider is that as humans, as incarnated in these lifetimes when we are interacting with one another, that love is perhaps the most challenging thing that we deal with. And especially, again, in our culture where from the time we are small, we are bombarded with the concept of love. Disney cartoons, Disney movies, the couples are in love or want to be in love or are upset because something has gone wrong. We are programmed with the expectations about romantic love. Well, who knows? Maybe we're absorbing it when we're in the womb. I would not be surprised because we know that a lot of information can come through that way. And as I said, when we are upset with the people that we love, sometimes, and I'm, the global we, sometimes we kill those people. Now, how do we go from loving someone to wanting to kill them, or actually killing them? And of course, I think the simplest answer to that is the pain that we feel when the object of our love has betrayed us or has informed us that we are no longer loved the way that we wanted to be. And I'm going to circle back to that. And one of the things that complicates love for us human beings is that is our physical vehicle. Some of us may remember a movie that came out, at least 20 years ago called What the Bleep Do We Know? If you haven't seen it, I suggest it. There's a wonderful scene where the main character, who is a woman played by Marlee Matlin, is experiencing some real roller coaster emotions. And in a cartoonish fashion, what's portrayed is the load of hormones that are released into her system. Because whether we realize it or not, a lot of our emotions are caused by or expressed with a flood of chemicals in our body. The brain clicks on and goes, and we're sort of helplessly along for the ride until those chemicals calm down a little bit. So to a certain degree, we are at the mercy of our physical vehicle. And that is also true of when people fall in love with each other, because Mother Nature wants people to bond so that the species will continue. Mother Nature is all about the procreation and the continuation of the species. So when people meet and fall in love with each other, again, there comes that download of hormones. I know that the bonding hormone, oxytocin, is one of the ones that we feel. And I remembered a quote, and I was actually able to find the author this morning. It took me a little poking around. M. Scott Peck, in The Road Less Traveled, wrote about when people fall in love. And one of the things he says is very, very enlightening. He said that one of the reasons that we are able to temporarily fall in love and feel that euphoria is because, as part of the bonding process, our ego boundaries collapse so that we can envelop that other person, and in turn we are enveloped by them. And we want to feel what that intense emotion, because first of all, you know, we've all been in love. There's an incredible high for a while. Feels great. But as Peck points out, the collapse of ego boundaries, that's an unnatural state. Sooner or later, those ego boundaries reassert themselves. And at that point, if the couple stay together, that begins the hard work of figuring out what, if anything, they have in common, where, if anywhere, they want to go together. And so some musician somewhere said, love is a battlefield, and it certainly can look that way, can feel that way. Okay, so how does this connect with our being spiritual beings having a physical experience? I think we probably understand that in a romantic relationship, that what each person is actually looking for in the other is union with God, is union with the divine, is union with that higher consciousness. But because we have forgotten who we are, we don't realize that that union actually comes from within. So we are constantly looking out there where we are not going to find it. There's now a term in popular culture which is serial monogamy. And that's when people go from, you know, partner to partner to partner. It doesn't matter whether they marry or procreate or not. The search is never ending because people aren't finding what they're looking for because they can't find what they're looking for in another person. They can only find it in the relationship with the divine. And so what will help us escape that never-ending search, let me back up for a minute. I'm not saying that there aren't successful relationships. They, of course, take work. Maybe it's luck. I suspect that it is the choice of the two participants that's their soul contract for this lifetime to have those experiences together. But it is from, I think it's from a higher realm. So how do we escape this merry-go-round? There are a couple of things involved here, and one of them is our belief in duality. And by that I mean our belief that we are separate from the divine. I've brought before an object that helps me, I think, illustrate this. And you know, you would think that in my basement I could find a big shiny disco ball, but I couldn't find it this morning, which means that my basement's gotten a little bit scary. But I love the disco ball with all of its little sparkles on it because to me each one of those facets represents an energy signature. And so the whole is the whole of whatever group of beings that you identify with. If you look at something like my glitter ball and realize that if you took away one of those facets, it would be incomplete. The glow would dim. That means that you are part of that glow and you cannot be taken away from it. You cannot be separated from it. But again, we are taught from the time we are in the womb that we are not part of the divine. And probably because our parents felt that way, and so they had no idea what they were teaching us. But I've often been a vocal critic of the Catholic Church as an institution. And when the Catholic Church created the doctrine of original sin, that was diabolically brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant as a way to control people and say, you are a sinner. Essentially, you are trash. And the only way for you to have any standing in the eyes of the divine is through me, the Catholic Church. As I said, it was brilliant in an awful way. So we have centuries of programming to try to divest ourselves of. It's a challenge, to put it mildly. It's a very big challenge. I have been wondering, and this is connected to love, I have been wondering why, and this sounds overly simplistic, but you'll understand in a minute. I've been wondering why people kill one another. And especially as I referred earlier to the fact that sometimes former lovers will kill one another. And on Friday I was doing something absolutely mundane, like probably folding laundry or something. And the epiphany came. And the epiphany was this. When people kill another person, they are attempting to kill their own fear. And because we know that when someone is doing something awful, what we need to do for them, what the best way to help them and to help us, since we are all connected, is to forgive them and pray for them, as difficult as that may be. And so I'm thinking about the president of Russia right now. He doesn't need Ukraine. His country has power and weapons and food and money. And I'm guessing, because you will remember that Ukraine used to be it was part of the USSR when it was made up of the big country and little countries. And I'm guessing that the president of Russia fears that he will appear weak if the fact that this very successful satellite, which became independent, he fears that he will appear weak if he does not take it back and hold it. I would guess that his greatest fear is appearing weak, because then he could lose his power, he could lose his office, he could be assassinated, any kind of terrible thing could happen. Things that he would consider to be terrible and terrifying. And so in an effort to deal with his own fear, he reaches out to grab and subdue something, and if he has to kill half of the country on his way to that goal, it doesn't matter, because all of that activity insulates himself from his own fear. And another example I thought of, do any of you recognize the name Matthew Shepard? About 20 years ago, a young gay man in Laramie, Wyoming, was essentially kidnapped from a bar, taken out in the country somewhere, tied to a fence, tortured and killed. The 2 or 3 men who did this did not know him. They were complete strangers. And there is a fear that some straight men have of gay men that I can't fathom. I can't wrap my head around it, but apparently exists, because gay and transgender people continue to die at the hands of strangers. But somehow or another, that fear was externalized. And in an effort to, I would say, my interpretation would be that in an effort to kill their own fear, they externalized it and killed him instead. And this sort of thing, sadly goes on all the time. And I don't know if it helps you to have an understanding of why these things happen, but it helps me to have some idea of why the world operates the way that it does. Now, of course, this has all, so far, been rather grim. So what are we going to do to move out of this? There are a number of things that we can do. And I need to remind you that a very small group of people can have a great deal of effect on the world. Again, this was in the last, 10, 20 years. Someone organized, let's call it a group prayer in various cities around the country. And the one that I remember specifically was in Boston. And the crime rate fell for the period of time during which the group of people were praying for that city, praying to raise the vibrational level. They weren't asking for anything specific like, we pray that the crime rate drop. They were asking that the vibrational level of everyone in the city be raised. Consequently, the crime rate fell. So here's what we can do, and you already know most of these things. We are going to remind ourselves gently. We are always going to be gentle with ourselves, because being harsh with ourselves just dims the glow ball, the glitter ball, which harms everyone. Gently and lovingly, we are going to remind ourselves that we are indeed one with the divine. And let's not even mention duality. We're just going to remind ourselves that we are one with the divine. As a matter of fact, each of us, what has us upright and moving on this planet is a spark of divinity. Each of our physical vehicles contains a spark of divinity. We are going to remember that as best we can, when we run across someone or something that disturbs us, we are going to do our best to forgive that person or that situation. And if you can't do that, and that's okay, if you can't do that, put them in the field of sunflowers. Put them in the field of sunflowers where hopefully they can feel the love of God shining down on them. There's and some of you will know what this is referring to. There's a person who used to attend our church when I was president a long time ago, and it was a difficult situation. And it was finally resolved, knocking on wood. And I was very much aware that the only way that I could be in any kind of loving dialogue with this person was at a soul level. I don't know if on a conscious physical level in this lifetime that I will be able to do better than that. But beating myself up over that would be absolutely pointless. So I allow myself to be in communion with her at a soul level. And if that's the best I can do in this lifetime, that's okay. That's absolutely okay. And the last piece that I want to share with you, which is the magic bullet for the day, is this. I want to remind us all that there is nothing that we can ever do. There is nothing that we can ever be or say or do that will cause us to be outside of the love of God. There is nothing we can be or say or do that will cause us to be unworthy. And so, we are never outside of the love of the divine. We're here snug in this glow ball, whether we know it or not. My invisible glow ball here. But that's all right, because sometimes we have to visualize things anyway. So the message that I want you to take away from this today is that love is a challenge, but we all accepted that challenge when we incarnated. And even if you need to write a little piece of paper and put it on your refrigerator, find the words that make the most sense to you, and remind yourself regularly that you are loved, because you and we are all wonderful sparks of divinity. There is nothing we can do that will ever exclude us from that. And the best thing we can do for ourselves in the world is to remember that everyone else is in the same divine boat. And so it is. Thank you. Will one or two people please bring up the baskets for the offering? Our community thanks you for your support. Mother, Father God, we thank you for these gifts of paper which we turn into energy in order to express our intent, and we are grateful. Thank you. And now, please rise and open Wings of Song to number 241. Number 241.
I want to know you more. The greatest thing in all my life is knowing you. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. I want to love you more. I want to love you more. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. The greatest thing in all my life is serving you. The greatest thing in all my life is serving you. I want to serve you now. I want to serve you now. The greatest thing in all my life is serving you.
I'm going to do the benediction in our circle. I invite you to join me in the circle that we have done for years, but we're going to do it right up here so the camera can see us. So please join me up here.
All right.
Somebody grab my elbow. There we go. All right. All right.
I'll just do your shoulder.
There we go. All right. Here we find out if I can hold the microphone and read at the same time. It's very challenging. All right. This little bit of wisdom is from a man named Mike Dooley. True brilliance, dear friends, is not a function of understanding one's view of the world and finding order, logic, and spirituality in it. True brilliance is understanding that your view of order, logic, and spirituality is what created your world. And we will sing our final song. Carol? Hit it. Woohoo! Happy Easter and join us for lunch downstairs. Thank you.